Great to see everybody this morning. As mentioned a while ago, we have pretty much a full house, and we're thankful for that, or at least all of our members are here. We appreciate your presence so very much. And we are always encouraged by your being here, and we trust as we study the Word of the Lord together, we can grow stronger in the faith. Do that from time to time as we come here together. This morning, by the way, appreciate the good song leading that was done by Joy and all the others who have participated so far. We appreciate your doing that. Always do a good job. This morning I want to talk about dinosaurs. And I know that you say that's a strange subject to talk about in a Bible class, but well, I believe that it is biblical. I believe that dinosaurs are compatible with the Bible teaching. The reason I'm doing this is someone asked a question about dinosaurs the other day, and I thought that it would be a good opportunity for me to talk about them and explain what little I know about dinosaurs. And so we want to take on that task this morning. And I will say at the very beginning that what we believe about dinosaurs will ultimately depend upon our worldview, how we view different things. If you're an evolutionist and you believe in an old Earth of 4.5 billion years, then you probably will accept the story that is being promoted by secular humanists today. Whereas on the other hand, if you approach this subject from a biblical perspective, you will come to an entirely different conclusion as to the age of dinosaurs and how they got here. So let's keep that in mind as we go through our study. And hopefully, if you have a secular perspective, I can change your mind this morning as we look at what some of the things that the Bible has to talk about. First of all, when we talk about dinosaurs, they are land reptiles. And one of the things that is unique about a dinosaur is that they have large holes in their skulls, besides that which is the eye sockets. Now that little girl in that picture there, she's reading what it says about dinosaurs, I guess, on the floor there. But how would you like to meet up with something like that whenever they were on the earth? They were indeed huge creatures. Another thing that makes a dinosaur, as I understand it, is that their legs are pretty much under their bodies, rather more like a human being's is, rather than an alligator. An alligator is a reptile as well, but their legs stick out, and so they do not maneuver in the same way that a dinosaur did. So as we talk about these different creatures that we're going to be talking about this morning, that's one of the things that differentiates them from other reptiles. Now we'll be talking about Plesiosaurus. I think that's how you pronounce that, and but that is not a dinosaur. We sometimes think of it as a dinosaur, but it's actually a sea reptile. And then there is the Mosasaurus, and that's another sea reptile. Again, we think about it as being perhaps a dinosaur. But dinosaurs were land reptiles. Here's a pterodactyl, and that is a flying reptile. So it's not a land reptile. And so when we speak of a dinosaur, we're talking about like Teratopsis, Stegosaurus, a Brontosaurus, and we're going to talk quite a bit about this creature in just a moment. And of course, old T-Rex that most everybody are familiar with. And these are just a few of the dinosaurs that we could talk about. Many, many dinosaurs existed at one time. So the thing that we want to begin with to answer a question, does the Bible speak of dinosaurs? And I believe that it does. But it does not use the word dinosaur. And someone might ask the question, why do we not find the word dinosaur in the Bible? Well, the word dinosaur is of recent origin. It came along after the Bible and the different in its different phases, whether the Old Testament or the New Testament came into existence. A man by the name of Sir Richard Owen back in 1841 coined that word, and it means terrible lizard. And obviously, when we look at those different creatures, that would be an apt description. Dinosaur fossils became known basically in the early 1800s. And there were some fossils that were found in the 1600s and even the 1700s. But most people did not know, when they found them, did not know what they were looking at. So it was not until the 1800s that it became known that these were a special kind of creature that they were looking at whenever they observed those different bones. And this would be sometime like I said, in the 1800s. I would submit to you this morning, and I don't know whether you've ever thought about this or not, but dinosaurs were created on day number 6, according to the Bible. And you ask, why is that, or how do you know that? Well, I believe the Bible tells us that. We talked about in their Bible class this morning about using a logic in our thinking. And certainly I think we can see that to be the case as we look at these verses. Genesis chapter 1 and the beginning verse 24. Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. I think that this was by divine fiat. God said, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was so. Continues in verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. Interestingly, all of the cattle, all of the creeping things that were upon the earth were created on the same day as was man. And so just how old are dinosaurs? Dinosaurs are just as old as man is. And we believe that man is about 6,000 years old, according to the genealogies that we find in the Old Testament. And so if man is about 6,000 years old, then that would make the dinosaurs to be that as well, not 6 million years old, or not even 150 or 200 million years old, but 6,000 years old. And the Bible says that. So we are immediately began to be faced with a decision we have to make. Do we believe what man tells us about the age of the earth and about the age of man and about the age of the various creatures upon the earth? That this long age, whenever they talk about, they have to have the long ages because they believe in evolution. You cannot get evolution with a long period of time. And so that's why they advocate these things. There is no way that they can know how old the earth is by some kind of a scientific test. These were dates that were placed there by mankind. They saw the various layers of on the earth, the various layers of sediment that were what I believe was placed there during the time of the flood. And they began to make these dates, and they start with the bottom of the oldest and then up to the top as the youngest period of time. The Bible does not teach such things as this, and you can either accept what God says, God who is its creator, God who is the author of the Bible, and the God who was there present when all of these things happened, or you can believe man who makes up these things as he goes, and they are constantly changing, I might add. So the dinosaurs were made on day 6 of creation. Is there evidence that creation was recent or in the distant past? Well, I believe that there is evidence that would suggest that it was recent rather than distant. Here's a slide of a soft dinosaur tissue. Now, a woman by the name of Mary Schweitzer, she was a paleontologist, or I guess still is. In 2005, she, for some reason, decided that she would take a specimen of, and I think it was a T-Rex bone, and put it in a solution to try to melt it or to dematerialize it. And what she noticed when she put this under the microscope was vessels, blood vessels, and blood tissue, an actual blood, whatever you call the blood parts that were inside of the blood vessels. You could actually take these blood vessels and you could stretch them whenever she got done. She was so confused about this that she actually ran the test 5 different times, if memory tells me correctly. And she did so because what she found should not have been the case. There should not have been any way, if you believe what the secular humanists tell you about dinosaurs, that they lived from 200 million years and they all died out about 65 million years ago. There is no way that this should have happened. And so she tested and retested and retested and retested. She came up with the same solution every time. Soft tissue, that which was still pliable. And every person, every logical person who would come upon this would reach the same conclusion. Logic says that this kind of stuff just does not stay for millions and millions of years. And so it would have to be younger. The ultimate solution would be, or conclusion would be, that it would have to be younger than 65 million years. And when we think about a fossil has to go through a certain procedure in order for it to become a fossil. An animal dies, and we don't find fossils today occurring. If we do, that'd be very unusual. But back then, during the time of the flood, and I believe these fossils that we find today are the result of the great flood of Noah. But these bones, these bodies would be covered with sediment, and it would be sudden. And over the process of time, of course, the bacteria would eat away the flesh, the bones would remain, and the minerals and the elements that would be surrounding the bone would absorb into the bone, into that porous part of the bone, and the bone would become stone. And that's what we find whenever we dig up a T-Rex bone or something as this. It is basically a piece of stone. And you wouldn't think that there would still be soft tissue, but there was. And this would suggest that the age of the earth is young and not old. And so that was a problem that a lot of people had that were of the same persuasion as Mary Schweitzer. Now they have, and they were really upset about it. This really bothered a lot of people. Now they've come up with some kind of safety mechanism to try to explain away all of this. But you just can't explain away the facts. And again, as I said, your worldview makes a difference, how you interpret these facts. The facts are there. It's how we interpret them that makes the difference. And if we have the worldview from a biblical standpoint, then we believe that this is in keeping with what the Bible teaches about the age of the earth. Another question that we might ask is, what did dinosaurs eat? I don't know whether you've ever thought about that. Everybody would say, well, got some choices. Did they eat plants? Did they eat meat? Or were they scavengers? If I were to ask each one of you that choice of those three, which one would you say? Well, I'm not going to ask you, but I believe that they ate plants. You say, no, that can't be. I've watched Jurassic Park, and I know that they ate meat because they went after them lawyers and those people that were in that movie. Well, that's what man would have us to believe. But the Bible, I believe, tells us a different story. Look at Genesis 1 in verse 29 beginning. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life. I have given every green herb for food. Now he begins here and says that man, first of all, was instructed and not authorized to eat plants, some kind of a plant, herbs and fruits and such as that. But also in verse 30, he said the same thing applies to every beast of the earth. So every beast of the earth and every creeping thing on the earth, that would include dinosaurs. And so dinosaurs would at first have been those kind of creatures that would eat plants, just like human beings were to eat plants at one time or the other. But then in Genesis 9, the first place that we find where we're authorized to and given permission to eat other than plant life is beginning in verse 3. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. So here we have the authority to eat living things, and that would be a very different thing from what they were authorized before the flood. Now, I don't know whether we might find some other passage that would show that they would be authorized to eat meats before this, but I do know that this is one of the first places that we find that they were authorized to eat meat, or given the authority to eat meat, and not just herbs and so on and so forth. So there seems to be that, and I think this goes along with the Bible teaching about sin. People did not die. Animals did not die before Adam sinned. Once Adam sinned, then people began to die, and thus the animals could kill each other, and humans could kill each other, and such as that. So that would suggest, I believe, that we went from being plant eaters to meat eaters. Another question is, what were those huge teeth for if they didn't eat meat? Well, today we have animals that have huge teeth, and they only eat grass. The monkeys of Ethiopia, grass-eating monkeys. Look at those big teeth there. And that skeleton is from a fruit bat. You know what a fruit bat eats? It eats fruit. So they have big teeth, and so just because they have big teeth does not mean that they are meat eaters. And So let's look at what the Bible has to say about dinosaurs. Again, keep in mind that when we think about a dinosaur, the word is not in the Bible. But I believe that there is a description here, and that was which was read a moment ago, that CJ read for us in the behemoth in Job chapter 40. Now let's read that again. And I believe the behemoth would be a creature like I'm picturing here, that we see, probably a Brontosaurus of some type. Beginning at verse 15, look now at the behemoth. Now the word behemoth is a Hebrew word, and it was transliterated into our English. It was not given a different name, but just that original name came into the English. Now look at the behemoth which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now that's an important clue for us here. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. The bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. So here is would seem that this was a gentle giant, not one who would be apt to try to kill other animals. He has a tail like a cedar, and he is the first of the ways of God. Probably suggests the idea of his being the largest of the ways of God. And this the Brontosaurus that we're looking at here would be the largest land animal that ever lived. Not the largest mammal, but the largest land animal. The largest mammal would be a whale, a blue whale, and it's still in existence. And so here is a story or a picture, and I want to, if you know about Job, most of us have read Job and are familiar with it. Job had a lot of problems. Job was coming to a time in his life that he began to become frustrated, and he began to question some things about what was going on in his life. And whether or not, almost like he knew more than God did. And so God began to ask him, if you go back to chapter 38, God began to ask Job some questions. He said, I'm going to ask you some questions and see whether or not you're capable of even talking to me, I guess maybe would be the thought. And he describes a number of animals. He starts out with things of the earth that had happened, things in the universe. And then he talks about the different animals. These were animals that Job would have been familiar with. And then he asked, what about the behemoth? If when you think about that, when he's talking about all these other animals, and then he says the behemoth, this would be an animal that Job would have been familiar with. Wouldn't be something that he had to scratch his head. What are you talking about, God? He knew what God was talking about. And the thing that he points out in verse 19 there says, he is the first in the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. And so Job couldn't tame him. And only God would be the one that would be able to tame him. And so here is an animal that we do not know. Some have made the conjecture that, let me finish reading the passage there. He lies under the locust tree in a covert of reeds and marsh. The Locust trees cover him with their shades. The willows by the brook surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan rushes into his mouth, though he takes it in his eyes, or one pierces his nose with a snare. So he is simply describing this beast as an enormous foe. And some have said that, well, maybe this is an elephant or a rhinoceros or a hippopotamus. But if you'll notice, this passage talked about his tail was like a cedar. You think about a cedar, you think about a big tree. And this beast having the ability to swish that tail around and probably do some damage with it if he hits something. But look at an elephant. An elephant doesn't have a tail like that. He just has a little cord like. And a hippopotamus has just a little flapper back there in the back for his tail. So that would not fit this description. Now, I don't know that it's this particular creature that Job is talking about here, or that God is talking about, but I'm pretty confident it's not an elephant or a hippopotamus. It is some kind of a great creature that Job was aware of, Job was familiar with. Then let's look at Job 41 real quickly. He refers to as the Leviathan here. And again, the Leviathan is taken from the original Hebrew. It doesn't change. And some have suggested that it could be the Plesiosaurus or the Mosasaurus. And look at what he says in verse 1 beginning. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak softly to you? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? Verse 5, will you play with him as with a bird? Or will you leash him from your maidens, for your maidens? Will your companions make a banquet for him? Will they portion him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. Never do it again. So he asks some questions that normally you could say, yes, I could do this with other animals, but not with this creature. Look at verse 10. No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who is he? Who then is able to stand against me? So see the point there? You can't control this animal. Certainly you cannot stand against me. And that's the point of in these chapters 40 and chapter 41. I want to ask another question. Were there dinosaurs on Noah's Ark? Well, I believe that there were. In Genesis chapter 7, in verses 8 and 9, so Noah with his sons, his wife, his sons' wives, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of clean animals, of animals that are unclean, of birds, and of everything that creeps on the earth. 2 by 2 they went into the ark to Noah, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. Now, he says that they went in 2 by 2. There were 2 of each kind. And we want to talk about that a little bit in just a moment. But we find that the previous verses, we find that of the clean animals, there were 7 pairs of each kind. But in this particular case, the rest of the animals, even the clean animals, there were 2 by 2. The 7 pairs would be for sacrifice and so forth. But the rest of them would be to continue their life, their normal life. Now, when we think about the Noah's Ark, this is what our young people usually see whenever they're being taught about Noah's Ark. They see a bathtub-looking boat and a bunch of people that look real happy about it. And that certainly was not the case. That is descriptive of the great flood of Noah. This would be more like what the ark perhaps would look like, a box-type structure, I believe, huge in size. It was 75 feet wide, 450 feet long, and 45 feet tall. If we can imagine this, it would be probably about maybe 4 of these church buildings lined up end per end, and probably double the width of it, and about 3 of them, or 2.5 to 3 of them tall. They contained 1.4 million cubic feet in volume. That would be equivalent to a 522 railroad stock cars, and it could have housed 125,300 sheep-sized animals. So it had an enormous amount of room within it. 3 floors, and then we found that there were. This is a chart that somebody figured back several years ago that would be possibly the number of mammals, 7,428, birds, 4,600, reptiles, 3,700, total of 15,754 creatures. Of those individuals that are figured, the different creatures, they figured that birds, there were about 2.6%. Mammals, there would be 28.7% of space used. Reptiles, 15.5%. So a total of about 45.8%, figuring the way these people did. And of course, we don't know for sure exactly how that would figure out, but it shows that there would be ample room for these animals that God specified to come into the ark. You notice that in that passage that we read a moment ago, that it says that the animals came in to Noah. I believe that was at God's doing. Noah didn't go out and collect the animals, but they came in to him. And the ones that came in, obviously, would be the ones that God would wanted for them to have done. And that being the case, it said of all the clean animals and all the unclean animals, everything that creeped upon the earth, that would include dinosaurs. And so I believe that that would tell us that dinosaurs could have been upon the earth. Now, Noah did not have to take every different species or every different breed of an animal by 2. 2 of this and 2 of that and 2 of the other, as we see in the world today. A lot of people are confused about that, I think. But that's not the case. The Bible says 2 of its kind. Now, let me use the example of a dog. Dogs come in all kinds of different breeds. I read where in the United States there are 190 different breeds of dogs in the United States. These are that I guess are recognized by the kennel associations and so forth. In the world, there's some 360 different dogs, breeds, and species. But of all of those breeds and species, there's only one kind, and that's a dog. And we don't find in the rock layers and in the fossil records, we don't find where a dog changes into a cat or a different type of animal. They're always a dog. And it may be that whenever Noah had the different animals to come into the ark, it may have been wolves that came in, because as I understand it, all dogs can trace their lineage back to a wolf. So he may have had 2 wolves, and that's where we get all the dog kinds. Matter of fact, I think in the last 200 or 150 years, most of the breeds that are in the world today have come about from selective breeding. So God devised, in his wisdom, that 2 kinds, or a kind of 2 different breeds or 2 different types could come together and could create another breed. And by selective breeding, that's what we have in the world today. Now take that and and compare it to dinosaurs. Same thing is true with dinosaurs, just like with dogs. There are 600 different kinds of dinosaurs, or named dinosaurs, as I understand it. I have no idea, but I got that information from a reliable source, I think. But there are only 60 different kinds. So that being the case, all that Noah would have had to done was to bring 60 pairs. There had been 120 different kinds of dinosaurs into the ark at this particular time. And another thing, somebody says, well, that ark wouldn't have nearly the capacity to hold all of those animals. Well, they didn't have to bring in the fully mature animals. They could have brought in animals that were young. We see these things in the museums where they fill up a whole room. One dinosaur may fill up this entire auditorium here. But he didn't have to do that. A T-Rex dinosaur egg has been found, and it was about the size of a football. And so they start out small, and so that may have been what Noah could have done and very easily have done. And as a matter of fact, it's doubtful that Noah would have wanted to bring in the senior citizen dinosaurs. He'd want to bring in the young dinosaurs that have a longer lifespan. So again, the idea that our critics would say, well, you just can't get all those animals in, I believe is a fallacious argument altogether. But I want to look at also about real quickly here, about some legends about dinosaurs. Now, this is extra biblical. It's not from the Bible, generally speaking. But I think it lends some credence to the fact that dinosaurs are young versus long age period. And they are referred to as dragons, both in secular history, and the Bible mentions dragons. It doesn't mention dinosaurs, but it does mention dragons. Now here's a monument to St. George, the dragon killer he's referred to. There was a dragon that was killing the livestock around a particular place in Britain. And George gets on his horse and he comes and he kills this dragon. He becomes a folk hero and ultimately was made a saint. And people became allegedly Christians as a result of what he did. We find one story of this creature in Bologna, Italy, in 1572. We're told that a young man killed a small hissing dragon, took it to a local scientist named Ulysses Adronodus, who described it in great detail. And he described it like this, and they believe that it's a Tyrannosaurus or something of that nature. I don't know all these names of these different animals. But anyway, that's what they believe that they were talking about here. And they believe this because there was good information that was left, a good description of this individual or this creature that was left to this individual. And then there is some evidence about a flying dragon by Herodotus. He was a historian. In his book 2, he says, there is a place in Arabia, not far from the town of Buto, where I went to learn about winged serpents. When I arrived there, I saw innumerable bones and backbones, great and small, and even smaller. He continues in book 2, says, winged serpents are said to fly from Arabia at the beginning of spring, making for Egypt, but the ibis birds encounter the invaders in this pass and kill them. The serpents are like water snakes. The wings are not feathered, but very like the wings of a bat. So this is what he was being told and what he reported by the local people of that particular area. Also, there's a temple in Cambodia, and this is a picture, well, the carving that is here of this picture of the carving was about 800 AT, and it looks like a stegosaurus if you compared that to what they believe a stegosaurus looks like. Here is a drawing that was made by the Aborigines from Australia, and apparently this creature washed up on the beach. It was about 35 feet long. They call it a yaru, and it looks very much like a plesiosaurus. And it has 4 flippers and has the long neck and the relatively long tail, about 35 feet long. And they claim that in the lake where this was found, that there are still some of these that they see on occasion. Again, that's their drawing that we see. So it's an evidence that possibly that these creatures could still be in existence. Here is in Africa, the African Congo. This is, of course, a picture of a brontosaurus. And whenever you show these people at this particular place of this, a picture like this, they would call it Moki Bimbi or Mokili Bimbi. And if you show them a picture of a bear or some other creature that they're not familiar with in their area, they don't know what it is. But that's what, whenever you show them, that's what they call it. And so they say the last sighting was in 1990. And these, they don't like these creatures because they say they kill elephants, whether that's the case or not. There are a lot of other things that we could see, sculptures from China from the year 4000, or 4,000 years ago, that look very much like different types of dinosaurs. And there are carvings on caves and such as that would be suggestive of these kind of dinosaurs that we have just talked about. So a lot of evidence that dinosaurs did exist with mankind, and that they are recent rather than late dated. So as we conclude our lesson this morning, we might ask the question, why did they die? Well, it's not just dinosaurs that died. Many of them did and have become extinct. But mammoths and the giant ground sloths have died and become extinct. It could be because of disease. It could be because of famine. It could be that they were hunted into extinction. You know, we almost did that with the buffalo in this country. But the ultimate reason that they died is because of sin. All life dies because of sin. We die physically because of Adam's sin, but we die spiritually because of our own sin. You know, and dinosaurs remind us of this. Whenever if we believe, and I do believe, that the dinosaur bones that we find all over the world today is a result of Noah's flood. There are thousands and thousands of those fossils, and they cry out to mankind, this is what sin has done to us. So we need to think about these dinosaurs are good to think about, but the end result of sin ultimately results in our own physical death and our spiritual death if we do not do that which God would have us to do. So as we think about these things this morning, I would submit to you this morning that God has provided a way back for us. If we're outside of the fold of safety, God has provided a way that we can be made right in His sight. If we're not a Christian, we must hear the word, we must believe it, we must repent of our sins, we must confess Jesus as Lord, and we must be buried in baptism with Him for the forgiveness of those sins. And if we're a child of God and we haven't lived as we should, God's provided a way back for us as well. That's through His second law of pardon, repentance and prayer. If you're in any way subject to heaven's call, we would encourage you to do what you need to do this morning as we stand and as we sing. Won't you come?